Everyone told you it was too late. Your knees first, then your back. Then a friend who tried it at 42 and blew out an Achilles, and a doctor who said something careful about impact, and a wife who worried out loud in the kitchen. The warnings came wrapped in logic, in love, in perfectly reasonable statistics about recovery times and cartilage. And you laced up anyway. That decision says more about where you are psychologically than almost anything else you've done in the last decade. And most people around you, maybe even you, have never fully understood why. This isn't a midlife crisis. It isn't about chasing your 20s. And it definitely isn't about refusing to accept that you're getting older. It's about something far more specific, far more honest, and far more interesting than any of those explanations give you credit for. Let's talk about what's actually happening. Here's what most men never say out loud about turning 40. You've spent 20 years becoming competent, at the job, at being a husband, a father, a provider, at handling things. You became the person other people bring their problems to, and you got good at it. Good enough that nobody checks whether you're okay, because obviously you are. You're the one who handles things. And somewhere inside all that competence, something went quiet. Not broken, not depressed, just quiet. Like a part of you that used to ask questions stopped asking. Like the version of you that used to want things started deferring instead. To the schedule, to the family, to the mortgage, to what makes sense. It doesn't feel dramatic. That's exactly what makes it easy to miss. It just feels like being responsible, like being mature, like being fine. And then, one ordinary morning, for reasons you can't fully explain, you go out and run. And something in your chest that had been asleep for a decade opens one eye. Here's what the psychology actually says about men who start running in their 40s. They don't score unusually high on recklessness. That's not the pattern. What shows up instead is something researchers describe as agency orientation, the deep need to be the direct cause of your own experience. To have your choices produce immediate, physical, undeniable results. And here's the problem with the life you built. Almost nothing works that way anymore. You make a decision at work and see the outcome in 6 months, filtered through 4 other people. You invest in your kids and find out how it went in 20 years. You put money away and hope. Everything meaningful in an adult man's life runs on a delay, through a committee, in someone else's hands. A run has no delay. You go out the door and your body responds. You push and it answers. You hold the pace and the pace holds. The consequence is immediate and total and yours. The first thing in years that is entirely, uncomplicatedly yours. For a man whose agency has been distributed across spreadsheets and other people's needs for 20 years, that isn't a hobby, it's oxygen. There's a man named Kevin, 44, from Columbus, Ohio. 16 years in operations management, good at it, well paid for it, and completely invisible inside it. He started running at 43, after what he describes as a Tuesday afternoon where he sat in his car in the parking garage for 20 minutes and couldn't remember what he was supposed to feel motivated about. Not sad, not burnt out exactly, just blank. Like a machine running a process with nobody home. He didn't tell his wife for 3 weeks that he'd started. He couldn't explain why he was hiding it. It just felt like something that was his, and he didn't want to have to justify it yet. The first time he ran a full 3 miles without stopping, no music, just a county road outside the city, he said something happened that he still can't fully describe. He didn't feel young again. That's not what it was. He felt present. Like his body and his mind were finally in the same room after years of one of them being somewhere else. Kevin runs every Saturday morning before his family wakes up. He says it's the only hour of the week that belongs completely to him, not to a role, not to a responsibility, just to him. What Kevin found has a name in psychology: psychological ownership, the sense that something, a time, a space, an experience, is genuinely and unconditionally yours. Research on ownership shows it's a fundamental human need, not a luxury, not selfishness. And men in their 40s are often profoundly ownership-starved. Their time is allocated, their energy is spoken for. Even their hobbies have quietly become things they do partly for other people. Running, for a lot of them, is the first thing in years that belongs to no one else, that can't be repurposed or scheduled over or turned into something useful for somebody. There's a second thing happening too. Think about what it actually takes to run well after 40. The pacing you have to learn instead of just charging out. The breathing. Reading your own body honestly. The difference between discomfort you can work through and pain you can't. Knowing when to back off. None of it comes automatically. It's earned, slowly, through repetition and small failures and corrections. Researchers who study adult development describe a drive that gets notably strong in men past 40. Mastery seeking. The need to build real competence in something that has no shortcut. Something that can't be delegated, automated, or talked around. And that matters more than it sounds. Because by 40, most of what you're good at, you've been good at for a long time. The challenge is gone. The growth is gone. You're excellent at a thing that stopped asking anything of you years ago. Running asks, every single time. There's a man named Desmond, 47, from Sacramento. 22 years as a contractor, a body that had been used hard and never really trained. He started running the spring his youngest left for college. Not because of the empty house, he says, but because he walked past a mirror one morning and genuinely did not recognize the man standing in it. Not the weight, the expression. His first attempt was 4 minutes before he had to stop and put his hands on his knees, humiliated, in his own driveway. He kept going out. 4 minutes became 8. 8 became 20. 14 months later, he ran a half marathon that nobody in his family thought he'd finish, including him. Desmond says the race wasn't the point. The point was the 50-something mornings where he didn't want to go and went anyway. He says he'd forgotten he was a person who could do that. He'd been so busy being reliable for everyone else that he'd stopped being reliable to himself, and running was where he found out that guy was still in there, waiting to be asked. But let's be honest about something. Not every man who starts running at 42 is in a healthy relationship with why. Some men run because it's the only available exit from a life that started to feel like a trap. The exhaustion becomes sedation. The mileage becomes the point. The run becomes the thing they hide inside instead of the thing they grow inside, a way to be gone without technically leaving. Psychologists call that experiential avoidance, using intense physical experience to outrun internal states you haven't been willing to sit with. The difference between running as reclamation and running as escape isn't always obvious from the outside, but you usually know. The healthy version makes you want to come back to your life, makes you more patient at dinner, more present on Sunday. The other version makes the idea of going back feel unbearable. If it's the second one, the running isn't the problem. But it isn't the solution either. It's pointing at something, and that something deserves your attention as much as your knees do. And then there are the warnings. The ones about your age, your joints, your recovery time, about having too much to lose. Here's the thing, those warnings aren't wrong. Bodies past 40 do take longer to repair. The people who love you aren't being unreasonable. But what they're measuring is the cost of running. They're not measuring the cost of not running, the cost of another decade of coasting, of being competent and present and completely unexpressed, of being fine in a way that slowly hollows a man out from the inside until there's nothing left but the rolls. You didn't start running because you stopped accepting your age. You started because you started listening to yourself again, maybe for the first time since you were 25. Every time you get up before the house does, every time your feet hit the road in the dark, you're not pretending it's 1998. You're choosing, deliberately, and at some cost, to stay a whole person. Not a reckless one, not a selfish one, a conscious one. And that's the thing we don't say enough to each other. That it isn't too late. That the quiet you've been living in isn't the same thing as peace. So drop a comment below. What finally made you go out that first morning, after everything and everyone telling you not to? Tell us the story. We actually want to know.